What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 2 Sleeper Picks.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you some of my top DFS Sleeper Picks, super low priced and low ownership players that could crush value this week and give your lineup an advantage over the field. These are risky plays, meant for large tournaments only. Don't go all in on any of these guys. They are high risk, high reward picks. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Oh, and good news, guys. Make sure to stay tuned to the very end of this video because we removed the box that was popping up and blocking the lineup. So now you can see a full lineup using these picks that we made in this video if you stay to the very end. Okay guys, NFL Week 2, let's take a look at the quarterback position. One of my sleeper picks at the quarterback position is Joe Burrow from the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Chicago Bears, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Joe Burrow scored 19 fantasy points in Week 1. He's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 18.8 fantasy points here in Week 2. He's only $5,800 DraftKings salary and $1,300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Bengals trailing by 1.5. So he's got some good wide receivers like Tyler Boyd. I think would be a good wide receiver to stack with Joe Burrow. Should be a close competitive game and a good matchup. So I like Joe Burrow here versus the Chicago Bears. Now another couple of sleeper picks here. If you want to save a little bit more salary off of Joe Burrow, take a look at Tyrod Taylor and Teddy Bridgewater. Now, Tyrod Taylor scored 24 fantasy points in Week 1. He's only going to be about 1% owned. He has a good matchup here versus the Cleveland Browns. But the sleeper pick that I like a little bit more than him, even though his ownership is a little bit more, take a look at Teddy Bridgewater from the Denver Broncos playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater scored 21 fantasy points in Week 1. He's going to be about 4% owned. He got 3 rush attempts. Oh yeah, Tyrod Taylor got 4 rush attempts. So both of these guys can get some yards on the ground. And Teddy Bridgewater is projected at 18.8 fantasy points here in Week 2. He's $5,400 DraftKings salary and $1,600 more on FanDuel. So I'd probably go with Teddy Bridgewater on DraftKings. And I think Tyrod Taylor is a much higher risk sleeper pick here. Although they do think that the Texans are going to fall behind by 13.5. So Tyrod Taylor could get a lot of work, but they could also struggle to score. So that's a tough one. So back to Teddy Bridgewater. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Broncos favored by 6. So it's a good matchup. So I like Teddy Bridgewater here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the other sleeper pick, I can't help but think that this is a good play here this week. Take a look at Derek Carr from the Las Vegas Raiders playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I know the Steelers got a good defense overall, and they've been pretty good versus opposing quarterbacks, but Derek Carr scored 28 fantasy points in Week 1. He had 4 rush attempts. He's only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 17.2 fantasy points here in Week 2. He's $5,300 DraftKings salary and $1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 47 points scored in this game, with the Raiders trailing by 6.5. So Josh Jacobs is out. I think Derek Carr is going to have to pass the ball all game long. It's going to be a passing game script. I think he's going to rack up a ton of fantasy points in this one at low ownership and low salary. You could stack him with a guy like Henry Ruggs and save a ton of salary across your lineup, or you could stack him with the stud Darren Waller, and you'll save the salary on Derek Carr so you can fit in Darren Waller. So I like Derek Carr here versus the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. One of my sleeper picks at the running back position in week 2 is Melvin Gordon from the Denver Broncos playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Melvin Gordon scored 24 fantasy points in week 1 off of 11 rush attempts and 3 pass targets. He's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 13.8 fantasy points here in week 2. He's $5,900 DraftKings salary and the same price on FanDuel. So I like that price on both sites, but I love that FanDuel price. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game. That's their over-under. And they have the Broncos favored by 6. So you got a fantastic matchup. A guy who had a great week 1, low ownership, and a pretty low price tag. So I like Melvin Gordon here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, now I think this is a super risky sleeper pick here, but just hear me out on this guy. Take a look at Nyheim Hines from the Indianapolis Colts playing the LA Rams, who have a pretty good defense overall, but they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Now, Nyheim Hines, he scored 14 fantasy points in week 1 off of 9 rush attempts and 8 pass targets. So that's 17 touches, and he's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 10 fantasy points here in week 2. He's $4,700 DraftKings salary and $400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48 points scored in this game, and they have the Colts trailing by 4. So if you remember last year, Nyheim Hines was one of those guys that was constantly surprising people week after week after week, and he did it again here in week 1. He's clearly going to be a big part of this Indianapolis Colts offense with 17 touches in week 1, still super low salary and low ownership. Now, even I'm a little hesitant to play Nyheim Hines, but I've got him in a couple lineups because he's got major upside. This guy can score 2 touchdowns and rack up a ton of fantasy points. So I like Nyheim Hines here versus the LA Rams. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. One of my sleeper picks here at the wide receiver position is DJ Chark from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Denver Broncos, who have a good defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. DJ Chark scored 18 fantasy points in week 1 off of 12 pass targets. He's only going to be about 1% owned, and he was on the field for 84% of the snaps. He's projected at 12.3 fantasy points here in week 2. He's $5,600 DraftKings salary and $400 more on FanDuel. So we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Jaguars trailing by 6. So this could be a pass-heavy game, a passing game script. DJ Chark could get another double-digit target day, and he's super low owned, low salary. So I like DJ Chark here versus the Denver Broncos.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game.
the targets they got per game so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, another sleeper pick at the wide receiver position is Van Jefferson from the LA Rams playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Van Jefferson scored 16 fantasy points off of 3 pass targets in week 1. He's only going to be about 1% owned, projected at 9.1 fantasy points here in week 2. But I like this pick because he's only $3,500 DraftKings salary, and he's $1,400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48 points scored in this game, with the Rams favored by 4. So if you're looking for one of those super low owned salary saver picks so you can stack your lineup at the other positions, take a look at Van Jefferson here versus the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, and another super low salary sleeper pick here at the wide receiver position. Take a look at KJ Osborne from the Minnesota Vikings playing the Arizona Cardinals, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing wide receivers, but KJ Osborne, he scored 15 fantasy points off of 9 pass targets in week 1. He was on the field for 81% of the snaps. He's going to be about 3% owned, and he's projected at 6.5 fantasy points in week 2, but I could see him getting closer to 10 fantasy points or more. And I like this pick because he's only $3,300 DraftKings salary, $1,300 more on FanDuel, and Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game, 50.5 points scored in this game, with the Vikings trailing by 4. So this guy got 9 pass targets in week 1, high-scoring game, on the field for 81% of the snaps. So he's got a lot going for him. So I like KJ Osborne here versus the Arizona Cardinals. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. One of my sleeper picks at the tight end position is Dallas Goedert from the Philadelphia Eagles playing the San Francisco 49ers, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Dallas Goedert scored 14 fantasy points off of 5 pass targets in week 1. He was on the field for 73% of the snaps, only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 10.9 fantasy points here in week 2. He's $4,600 DraftKings salary and $1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49.5 points scored in this game, with the Eagles trailing by 3. So this is another guy who was awfully surprising last year. He kept putting up big stat line after big stat line. Everyone's thinking Zach Ertz is going to have a big game, and it was Dallas Goedert. And right back to that here in week 1, put up 14 fantasy points off of 5 pass targets. Zach Ertz had a hamstring injury. Not sure how much he's going to play. So Dallas Goedert could get more snaps and more targets while Zach Ertz gets back up to speed. So I like Dallas Goedert here versus the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, the other sleeper pick that I like at the tight end position is Cole Kmet from the Chicago Bears playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. And although they were pretty good versus opposing tight ends, Cole Kmet, he scored 9 fantasy points in week 1 off of 7 pass targets. He's only going to be about 3% owned. He was on the field for 74% of the snaps, projected at 9.8 fantasy points here in week 2, and he's only $3,700 DraftKings salary, $1,400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Bears favored by 1.5. So I like Cole Kmet here versus the Cincinnati Bengals.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.